Samuel Adams adjusted his watch for the third time as he stood by the front door of his penthouse apartment, the early morning sun spilling through the floor-to-ceiling windows and casting long shadows across the sleek marble floor. The city was just waking up below him, a steady hum of life, honking taxis, and distant sirens that somehow felt far away up here in the clouds. His hand closed tightly around the car key fob as the soft click of footsteps echoed down the hallway. He barely glanced toward the sound until a soft, trembling voice stopped him mid-step. "Please, Mr. Adams, don't leave today." The words hung in the air, fragile but urgent. Samuel turned slowly, lowering his gaze to see Daisy, the housemaid, kneeling on the cold tiles, her eyes red-rimmed and shining with fear. Her small hands were clasped tightly together as if in prayer. "Daisy?" His voice was calm but laced with confusion. "What's this about? You look like you've seen a ghost." She swallowed hard, lifting her chin slightly. I had a dream last night, Mr. Adams. It felt so real. You were wearing that navy blue suit you always wear to the meetings. You left the house, got into your car, and you never came back. There was blood, so much blood. People were screaming your name. "Please, sir, don't go." He blinked, the city noises outside briefly dimming in his ears. The quiet of the room suddenly felt heavy, almost oppressive. "Dreams can be strange things, Daisy," he said softly, stepping toward her. "Why are you so certain this one means something?" "Because it wasn't just a dream," she whispered, trembling. "It was a warning." Before Samuel could respond, his phone buzzed sharply in his pocket. He pulled it out to see the caller ID flashing, Thomas Grant. The man who was not only his business partner but his oldest friend. He sighed, fingers hovering over the answer button. The investor meeting was starting in less than an hour. A deal that could shape the future of Adams and Grant Realty for years. Billions of dollars were on the line. "Daisy, I appreciate your concern," Samuel said, voice steady now. "But I can't let a dream decide my day." She looked up at him, eyes wide, tears pooling. "Please, Mr. Adams. Just, wait a little longer. Stay here. Let the day pass." The sharp sound of heels clicking down the marble staircase broke the tension. Rita Adams appeared, wrapped in a silk robe, her face perfectly made up, eyes narrowed as she took in the scene before her. "What's going on here?" Rita's voice was icy. Samuel met her gaze, still watching Daisy. "She says I shouldn't leave today." Rita's lips curled into a disdainful smile. "Because of a dream?" Daisy nodded solemnly. Rita crossed her arms. "I told you, Daisy, these fantasies have no place in this house. You're a maid, not a prophetess. This is a business day. Your job isn't to disrupt it with nonsense." Samuel's eyes flicked between the two women. He felt the familiar knot tightening in his chest, the one that had been there for years now, every time Rita dismissed what didn't suit her. "Enough," he said quietly, raising his hand. "I'm not leaving." Rita's mouth opened in disbelief. "You're what?" "I'm staying," he repeated. "Today, I'm staying." Daisy's gasp of relief was almost inaudible. Rita turned sharply and stormed upstairs, the tension in the air crackling like a live wire. Samuel closed the door behind her, the silence settling heavy and strange. He didn't know why the fear gripped him so tightly, but he listened. He sat down on the leather sofa, eyes fixed on the marble tiles as if they held the answer. The day crept forward, the city's pulse outside oblivious to the storm brewing within the walls of the penthouse. Outside the city was alive and unforgiving. At 8:15 a.m., Samuel's driver, James, left the building, taking the usual route to the downtown investor meeting. 20 minutes later, the screech of tires and a terrible crash shattered the morning calm. A truck, its brakes failing, slammed into the Lexus James was driving. The car flipped several times before coming to rest against the guardrail. James was rushed to the hospital, unconscious. Samuel sat alone in the penthouse, the phone call from the hospital still ringing in his ears. He didn't move. He didn't speak. He just stared. The days that followed brought no relief. Samuel's trust began to crack like old stone under pressure. Daisy stayed close but never pushed. Rita's coldness grew sharper, her disdain for Daisy more obvious. And Thomas. Thomas was nowhere to be found. The cracks were forming. And when they broke, nothing would ever be the same. The first light of dawn crept through the tall windows of Samuel's penthouse, spilling pale gold onto the marble floors. The city below began its relentless hum, the cacophony of Lagos waking up. But inside the apartment, a heavy silence held sway. Samuel sat in his study, the soft glow of his tablet illuminating a tired, restless face. Reports, emails, contract drafts, each screen flicker reminded him of the empire he'd helped build, now shadowed by doubt and betrayal. His phone buzzed again. He glanced at the caller ID, Rita. He hesitated before answering. "Sam, we need to talk." Her voice was brittle, strained, yet colder than usual. He took a slow breath. "About what?" "About Daisy." Samuel frowned. "What about her?" "She's becoming too comfortable here. Too quiet, too observant." Rita's words sliced through the air. Samuel stared at the ceiling. Daisy's presence was a balm amid the chaos, a quiet steadying force. Yet, Rita's unease made him question. "Why does it matter to you?" he asked softly. "Because she's not just a maid anymore. She watches everything. Listens to everything. She knows things she shouldn't." Rita's voice dropped, barely a whisper. Samuel looked toward the living room where Daisy was silently clearing a tray. Her calm composure was a sharp contrast to the storm brewing around her. "I'm keeping her," he said firmly. There was silence on the other end before Rita finally sighed. "You always did have a soft spot for her." He closed the call and leaned back in his chair, tension knotting his shoulders. Meanwhile, Daisy worked methodically, but her mind was elsewhere. The dreams, the warnings, they had only just begun. She remembered the quiet conversations in the kitchen, the hushed phone calls that stopped the moment she entered. The secrets wrapped in smiles and half-truths. Her loyalty was not to the house or its opulence but to the man who had trusted her instincts. But trust was fragile. At the company, Thomas's absence was becoming glaring. Calls went unanswered, emails delayed. Samuel's partner and once brother-in-arms was suddenly a ghost. His investigation uncovered whispers of shady deals, suspicious bank transfers, and unexplained expenses. Every step Samuel took revealed more fractures in the foundation of his business. One evening, as Samuel sifted through documents, his phone lit up with a message from an anonymous source. "Check the Dubai contract. Thomas isn't who you think he is." Back at the penthouse, Rita paced the marble floors in frustration. She dialed Thomas again, desperation creeping into her voice. "We need to fix this," she demanded. "Sam's getting too close." Thomas's reply was cold and detached. "Patience. The plan is still on track." Rita bit her lip, anger and fear twisting within her. The cracks were no longer hidden. Trust was unraveling. And the calm before the storm was over. The city lights flickered below like distant stars as night settled over Lagos. Inside the penthouse, Samuel sat alone at his desk, the glow of his laptop screen casting sharp shadows across his face. The silence was thick, broken only by the quiet hum of the air conditioner. His thoughts churned. The anonymous tip about the Dubai contract had set a fire in his mind, one that refused to be extinguished. Thomas's unexplained absence, the strange financial discrepancies, it all painted a picture Samuel wasn't ready to accept. Just then, his phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number popped up. "Look deeper." They're closer than you think. Samuel's heart pounded. He knew exactly who they were. He stood, pacing the room, the weight of betrayal pressing down. How had he missed the signs? The late nights Toby spent on the phone, the secret meetings, Rita's growing coldness, they were pieces of a puzzle he had ignored. Meanwhile, in a dimly lit hotel room on Victoria Island, Rita sat across from Thomas. The air between them was thick with tension. "We're running out of time," she hissed. "Sam's suspicions are growing. If he digs too deep, everything falls apart." Thomas ran a hand through his hair, frustration etched on his face. "We need one final move, something decisive. The Dubai deal is our way in, but Sam's holding back." Rita's eyes narrowed. "Then make sure he signs those papers. No more delays." The plan was ruthless, but neither cared anymore. Their ambitions had blinded them to loyalty, to friendship. Back at the penthouse, Daisy moved silently through the rooms, her eyes sharp, her senses alert. She'd heard the whispers, seen the glances, felt the undercurrent of deceit. She approached Samuel's study door cautiously. Knocking softly, she entered, holding an envelope. "I found this among the documents you left," she said quietly, placing it on his desk. Samuel looked up, surprise and gratitude flickering across his face. "Thank you, Daisy," he said, his voice softer than before. She hesitated. "Be careful, sir. Not everyone in this house is who they appear to be." That night, Samuel sat long after the others had gone to bed, piecing together the truth. He knew confronting Rita and Thomas would come with a price, but he was ready. Because sometimes, the darkest shadows revealed the brightest light. The morning sunlight filtered weakly through the heavy curtains of the penthouse. Samuel sat rigidly at the head of the long dining table, untouched coffee cooling beside him. The silence was thick, suffocating, as the others began to assemble for breakfast. Rita entered gracefully, her usual confident smile replaced by a tight, measured expression. Daisy moved quietly behind, setting down plates with practiced ease. Samuel's eyes met Rita's for a long moment before he broke the silence. "We need to talk." Rita's lips pressed into a thin line. "About? About trust. About the company. About us." Mariah's cold gaze sharpened. "Are you accusing me?" "No," Samuel said quietly. "I'm stating facts. I know about the offshore accounts. The false contracts. And the secret meetings." A flicker of something, anger, fear, crossed Rita's face. "You don't have proof." "I have enough." Samuel's voice hardened. "And I'm done pretending." Thomas stepped out of the shadows, appearing behind Rita. His once charming smile was gone, replaced by something colder, more calculating. "This isn't over, Samuel," Thomas said quietly. "You think you can just cut us out?" Samuel stood slowly, eyes blazing. "I'm taking back what's mine." Daisy, standing nearby, watched silently. Her presence was a quiet reminder that Samuel wasn't alone anymore. That evening, Samuel met with his lawyer and financial advisor. Plans were drawn. Documents prepared. The battle lines were drawn in ink and steel. Back home, Rita's composure cracked behind closed doors. Alone, she sank to the floor, phone pressed to her ear. "We need a new plan," she whispered. "Before he destroys everything." But Samuel was already moving forward, guided by truth and the quiet strength of unexpected allies. The air in the penthouse was thick with tension, heavier than any storm raging outside the windows. Samuel paced the polished floors of his study, the weight of recent events pressing on his shoulders like a physical force. His phone buzzed with messages. Some supportive, others laced with warning. He wasn't alone anymore, but the battle was far from over. Meanwhile, Rita was plotting her next move. Desperation mingled with determination in her eyes as she met with a mysterious stranger in a dimly lit cafe tucked away in an unassuming part of Lagos. The stranger's face was obscured in shadows, but the promise of a deal was clear. Back at the penthouse, Daisy found herself caught in the middle of mounting suspicion. Mariah's thinly veiled hostility was becoming outright aggression. The housemaid's every move was watched, every word twisted. But Daisy had a secret, a strength beyond her humble exterior. She had seen betrayal before, and she was ready to face it again. As the week wore on, Samuel summoned his closest trusted allies. Together, they mapped out strategies to outmaneuver Thomas and Rita's schemes. Yet, even as plans formed, Samuel's heart ached with the price of trust lost. The woman he once loved now stood on the opposite side, and the friend he'd considered a brother had turned to an enemy. The glow of dawn filtered softly through the towering windows of the penthouse, casting long shadows across the marble floors. Samuel stood silently by the balcony, staring out at the city below, the weight of recent betrayals heavy on his shoulders. Today, decisions had to be made. His phone buzzed, another message from his lawyer, documents ready for signing, actions to finalize. But Samuel hesitated. Trust had been shattered. Loyalties questioned. And the woman he once called wife was now his greatest adversary. Inside, Daisy moved quietly, preparing the house for the day. She had noticed the shift, Samuel's tension, Rita's growing hostility, and Thomas's ominous absence. Approaching Samuel softly, she said, "Sir, whatever you decide, remember you're not alone anymore." Her words, simple but sincere, cut through the fog of doubt. Meanwhile, Rita's desperation peaked. She called a covert meeting with key players in the company's darker circles, seeking allies to tip the balance in her favor. Her voice was cold and commanding. "We either control Samuel or we destroy him." Plans were laid, traps set, and the game grew deadlier. As the day unfolded, Samuel convened a meeting with his trusted team, laying bare the situation and rallying support. He was at a crossroads: choose revenge and risk everything, or rebuild with caution and integrity. The path wasn't clear, but one thing was certain: the web of deceit was tightening, and only the strongest would survive. The tension in the penthouse was palpable. It had been building steadily like a storm gathering force, and now it was ready to break. Samuel sat at the head of the boardroom table, his gaze steady, eyes sharp as knives. Around him sat his trusted team, allies who had stood by him through betrayal and uncertainty. The door opened, and Thomas strode in, confident but cautious, followed by Rita. The atmosphere shifted instantly, a mix of confrontation and cold calculation. Samuel didn't waste words. "The evidence is clear. The offshore accounts, the forged contracts, the attempts to undermine me, all of it." Thomas smirked, but there was no humor in it. "You think this is the end? You think you've won?" Rita's eyes flashed with anger and desperation. "You've pushed us too far." Samuel leaned forward. "I'm here to take back what's mine. And to ensure this company thrives without corruption." The room erupted into a heated debate. Accusations flew, alliances cracked, and truths spilled out in a torrent of anger and betrayal. Meanwhile, Daisy watched quietly from the sidelines, her presence steady and calm, a silent guardian amid the chaos. As the night deepened, a decision was made, one that would reshape not only the company but every life intertwined with it. The early morning light was soft and forgiving, a stark contrast to the turmoil of the past weeks. Samuel stood by the window, the Lagos skyline stretched before him like a canvas waiting to be painted anew. The dust of betrayal was settling, but the foundation for a fresh start was being laid. Daisy entered quietly, carrying a tray with tea. She placed it on the table beside him, offering a gentle smile, a small gesture that spoke volumes. "We're moving forward, sir," she said simply. Samuel nodded, feeling the weight on his chest begin to lift. He had taken back control of the company, cleaned out the rot, and began assembling a new team. Young, passionate, and trustworthy. Rita and Thomas were gone, their schemes undone. But the hardest part was rebuilding trust, not just with others, but with himself. As Samuel prepared for the company's reopening event, he found a quiet moment to reflect. The road ahead was long, but for the first time in a long while, it was his own to walk. The evening air was warm but calm, the city's pulse steady and alive beneath the twinkling lights of Lagos. Samuel stood on the balcony of his penthouse, the familiar skyline stretching before him, now a symbol of endurance and hope. Behind him, Daisy moved softly through the quiet rooms, her presence a comforting reminder of how far they'd come. She had been the unexpected constant, the quiet guardian who saw through the shadows and stood firm when all else faltered. Samuel reflected on the storm that had passed, the betrayal, the heartbreak, the fight for his company and soul. But more than anything, he thought of the future. One built on honesty, strength, and new beginning. As the night deepened, the door opened gently. A woman entered, calm and radiant, with a warmth that reached into the room and into Samuel's heart. "Hello, Samuel," she said softly. "I believe this time, it's real." He smiled, the weight finally lifting. The storm was over, but the journey, their journey, was just beginning. The night air drifted softly through the open balcony doors of Samuel's penthouse, carrying with it the distant sounds of Lagos winding down. The city lights shimmered like a sea of stars beneath the velvet sky, casting a glow that mirrored the quiet hope blooming inside. Samuel stood near the glass railing, hands resting lightly on the cool surface, his gaze fixed on the horizon. The events of the past months, betrayal, heartbreak, and the slow rebuilding, played over in his mind like a distant echo. But tonight felt different. Tonight was about something new. Behind him, footsteps approached, light and deliberate. He didn't turn immediately, already sensing the calm strength that filled the room with her presence. Amara stepped into view, holding a tray with 2 steaming cups of hibiscus tea. Her silhouette was outlined by the soft glow of the city lights, and when she smiled, it was as if the room itself breathed a little easier. "Tea," she said softly, setting the tray down on the side table. Her voice was steady, warm, a balm to the quiet storm inside Samuel. He turned slowly, meeting her eyes, feeling the weight of the moment settle between them. "Thank you," he said, voice low but sincere. They moved to the living room, each settling into a chair that faced the sprawling cityscape beyond the windows. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with possibility rather than tension. Amara was the first to break it. "So," she began, fingers curling around a warm cup, "what's your favorite way to find peace when life gets too loud?" Samuel smiled, a genuine lift of his lips that hadn't come easily in some time. "I used to think it was reading," he replied, "or walking through quiet places. But lately, I'm realizing it's about connection, finding someone who makes the noise fade away." Her eyes sparkled in the low light. "That sounds like a rare kind of peace." He nodded thoughtfully. "Maybe it is." They talked then, about simple things and complicated ones, dreams, fears, moments of joy, and the scars life leaves behind. Samuel found himself sharing pieces of his past he hadn't voiced aloud in years. Amara listened, not with pity but with understanding, as if she recognized the strength beneath the wounds. Hours slipped by unnoticed. Laughter came easily, and the quiet moments between words felt just as important. At one point, Amara's hand brushed against his, a touch so light it might have been imagined, but it wasn't. The warmth spread through him like a spark, awakening something fragile yet undeniable. He looked up, their eyes locking in silent acknowledgement. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. "For being here." She smiled, her gaze steady and bright. "Always." Outside, Lagos pulsed with life, but inside, 2 souls found a stillness that promised a new beginning. The night deepened, but inside the penthouse, time seemed to slow, allowing Samuel and Amara to settle into a rhythm as natural as breathing. The initial hesitation that had hung between them like a fragile glass now softened, replaced by genuine curiosity and shared vulnerability. Samuel leaned back in his chair, watching Amara as she spoke about her childhood in a small village outside Lagos. Her words painted vivid pictures of narrow dusty streets, the sound of laughter from children playing in the distance, and the rhythm of market days filled with the sense of spices and freshly baked bread. "I grew up with a large family," Amara said softly, her eyes distant but clear. "It wasn't always easy, but it taught me resilience. And the importance of dreams, no matter how big or small." Samuel nodded, feeling a kinship in her story. "Resilience," he echoed. "That's something I'm learning to reclaim." She smiled gently. "We all carry scars, but they don't have to define us." They moved seamlessly from stories of the past to hopes for the future, discovering in each other a shared desire for peace, honesty, and something more than just survival. Samuel found himself opening up about the betrayals that had nearly broken him, his wife's coldness, his partner's treachery, the loneliness of rebuilding. "You don't have to carry those burdens alone anymore," Amara said softly. "Sometimes, letting someone in is the first step to healing." He looked at her, the weight of his guarded heart beginning to lift. "Maybe it's time." Their conversation deepened, the air thick with unspoken promises and the first stirrings of something tender and real. Outside, the city pulsed with life, but inside the penthouse, two souls found a quiet sanctuary, a beginning woven from trust, hope, and the gentle courage to love again. As the conversation ebbed and flowed, Samuel's eyes caught the flicker of candlelight dancing on Amara's face. The soft glow highlighted the quiet strength behind her calm demeanor, a strength that seemed to mirror his own, weathered but unwavering. She leaned forward slightly, her voice lowering to a conspiratorial whisper. "You know, sometimes the hardest part is trusting again. Not just others, but yourself." Samuel chuckled softly, the sound genuine and unguarded. "I used to think trust was a luxury I couldn't afford. Now, I'm beginning to believe it's the foundation of everything worth having." Amara's smile deepened, warmth radiating from her like a quiet flame. "That's beautifully said." They talked late into the night, weaving stories of past joys and regrets, laughter and silence. The moments between words were just as meaningful, an unspoken agreement to be present, to listen, to be ready. At one point, Amara reached out, her hand brushing lightly against Samuel's. The touch was a gentle promise, a bridge over the wounds they both carried. Samuel turned his hand slowly, intertwining his fingers with hers, holding on as if anchoring himself to something solid and true. "Thank you for this," he murmured. "For the company, the conversation, for not giving up." Amara's eyes glistened with unshed tears, a smile curving her lips. "I'm not going anywhere." The city outside faded further into the background, and in that small, luminous room, two hearts began to beat in quiet harmony, a tender beginning to a love story neither expected but both desperately needed. The morning sun spilled gently through the curtains, casting warm light across the penthouse. Samuel awoke feeling a calm he hadn't known in a long time. The night before, with Amara's quiet presence beside him, had softened something inside, a fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, healing was possible. As he moved through the morning routine, the memories of their deep conversations lingered. The way her eyes held understanding, the way her laughter had seemed to dissolve the shadows. Later that day, Amara arrived, carrying a basket of fresh fruits and herbs from the market. She moved with ease and grace, a contrast to the structured world Samuel was used to. They shared breakfast on the balcony, the city waking up beneath them, as they talked about dreams for the future and the kind of life they wanted to build, not just for themselves, but for those around them. But trust was still fragile, and the past still cast long shadows. Samuel knew the journey ahead would not be without its challenges, but with Amara by his side, he felt ready to face whatever came next. The soft chatter of Lagos streets filled the balcony as Samuel and Amara sat side by side, the early sun warming their skin. The basket between them was a colorful array of mangoes, oranges, fresh mint, and ginger, remnants of Amara's morning trip to the bustling market. The scents mingled with the fresh morning air, creating a sensory calm. Samuel broke the silence first, his voice thoughtful. "It's strange, isn't it? How simple things like fresh fruit and morning sun can feel like a luxury after so much chaos." Amara smiled, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "I think it's because those moments remind us of life's gentler rhythms, the ones that get lost when the world feels heavy." He nodded, his gaze drifting toward the city's skyline. "I want to learn how to live like that again, to find peace in the everyday." She reached for his hand, their fingers entwining naturally. "Then we'll do it together. One day at a time." Samuel squeezed her hand gently, the promise in those words resonating deep inside him. But even as hope blossomed, he was aware of the delicate balance they walked. The past could still reach out and unsettle the calm. Later, as they moved inside to prepare tea, the doorbell rang. Samuel frowned briefly. Unexpected visitors were rarely good news. Amara caught his hesitation and gave a reassuring smile. "It's okay. We'll face whatever comes," she said softly. The door opened to reveal one of Samuel's closest old friends, an ally who had stood by him through dark times. The man stepped inside with a knowing smile, sensing the new atmosphere. "Good morning, Samuel," he said, nodding toward Amara. "I see things are looking up." Samuel smiled back, gratitude swelling in his chest. "They are, thanks to her." As the three sat down to catch up, Samuel felt a renewed sense of strength. Trust wasn't just about two people, it was about community, support, and shared resilience. The journey ahead was uncertain, but with Amara and friends by his side, he was ready to build something lasting. As the day wore on, Samuel and Amara found comfort in the simple routines of shared life. The quiet moments became a refuge from the chaos that had once consumed him. Yet, trust, like a delicate flower, needed nurturing in time. That afternoon, Samuel invited Amara to join him at his office, a space that had once felt cold and isolating but was slowly transforming into a place of new possibilities. Walking through the bustling halls filled with young, eager professionals, Amara observed the energy, the hope, that Samuel had reignited within his company. For the first time, she saw not just a man burdened by past wounds but a leader who believed in the future. Later, in a small conference room, Samuel shared his vision for the company's next chapter. Amara listened intently, offering thoughtful insights and gentle encouragement. "Your passion is contagious," she said softly. "I believe in this, Samuel, and in you." Her words touched something deep within him. It was more than business. It was about rebuilding trust, starting fresh, and opening his heart to possibilities beyond profit. But as the afternoon faded into evening, reality crept back. A call came in, news of a complication with a former business associate threatening to stir trouble. Samuel's expression tightened, but Amara reached out, her hand steady on his arm. "We face it together," she whispered. In that moment, Samuel realized that building trust wasn't about avoiding the past but facing it head-on, hand in hand. The evening settled softly over Lagos as Samuel and Amara left the office, stepping into the warm embrace of the city's night. The streets were alive with music, laughter, and the steady rhythm of life, a stark contrast to the tension they just faced. Samuel glanced at Amara, the glow of the streetlights catching the sparkle in her eyes. "Thank you for being here today," he said quietly. Amara smiled, linking her arm with his. "I'm not going anywhere. Remember that." They walked slowly toward the car, savoring the moment, a simple act of togetherness that felt profound after so much uncertainty. Later that night, as they sat in the quiet penthouse, Samuel reflected on how far he'd come. Trust wasn't a destination but a journey, one that required patience, openness, and courage. Amara's hand found his again, their fingers entwining in the soft glow of the city lights. "We're building something real," she said softly. "Yes," Samuel agreed. "And I'm ready for whatever comes next." Outside, the city pulsed with life, but inside the penthouse, two hearts beat in quiet harmony, ready to face the future, together. The morning light was softer than usual as it filtered through the tall windows of the penthouse. Samuel sat quietly at the breakfast table, the steaming cup of coffee in front of him a comfort in the uneasy stillness of the room. Amara moved around the kitchen with practiced ease, but even her calm demeanor couldn't mask the tension that lingered beneath the surface. "Samuel," she said gently, pausing to look at him. "I know this isn't easy, the past doesn't just disappear." He sighed, fingers tracing the rim of his cup. "No, it doesn't. Sometimes it feels like a shadow that follows wherever I go." She stepped closer, her hand resting lightly on his. "We can face those shadows together." Samuel looked up, gratitude and vulnerability mixing in his eyes. "I want to believe that." The day ahead was filled with reminders, calls from former associates, messages stirring old wounds, and the unexpected appearance of someone from Samuel's past who could threaten the fragile peace they were building. But with Amara by his side, Samuel felt the courage to confront what had been left unspoken. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the polished floors as the doorbell rang unexpectedly. Samuel's heart tightened momentarily, surprise mingling with unease. Amara looked toward him, sensing the shift. "Who could that be?" she asked softly. Samuel rose and moved to the door, the familiar weight of old memories pressing on him. Opening it revealed a figure he hadn't seen in years, a man whose presence stirred a mix of anger, regret, and unresolved pain. "David," Samuel greeted cautiously. "What brings you here?" David stepped inside, his expression unreadable. "We need to talk." Amara watched silently from the living room, her eyes steady but alert. As the conversation unfolded, Samuel confronted difficult truths, betrayals from the past, broken promises, and the tangled web of relationships that still threatened to unravel everything he was rebuilding. But this time, he wasn't alone. Amara stood firm beside him, a pillar of support, reminding him that the past didn't have to dictate the future. The hours stretched into evening, but with every word spoken, every truth faced, Samuel felt a little more free. As the evening shadows lengthened, the atmosphere in the penthouse grew heavy with raw emotion. Samuel and David sat across from each other, the weight of years pressing between them like a thick fog. David's voice was low but firm. "Sam. I made mistakes, mistakes that cost us everything. I came here to try and make things right, if you'll let me." Samuel's gaze was steady, searching. "It's not just about mistakes anymore, David. It's about trust, something I can't just hand over again." David nodded, a flicker of remorse crossing his face. "I know. But I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn it back." Amara finally spoke, her voice calm but resolute. "Trust is rebuilt through actions, not words. But no one should have to face their past alone." Samuel glanced at Amara, gratitude shining in his eyes. Then back at David. "We'll take it one day at a time. But understand, the past doesn't just disappear." David gave a small, appreciative smile. "I understand." The three shared a quiet moment, a fragile truce, but a beginning. As the night deepened, Samuel felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Facing the past was never easy, but with Amara and even David beside him, the future seemed a little brighter. The first signs of dawn touched the horizon, painting the Lagos skyline in soft hues of gold and lavender. In the penthouse, Samuel stood by the window, a cup of coffee warming his hands. Beside him, Amara leaned her head gently against his shoulder, both of them watching the city awaken. It had been months since the storm of betrayal and broken trust had passed. Months of rebuilding, not just businesses and homes, but hearts and relationships. And standing by them through it all was Daisy, steady, loyal, invisible when she needed to be, but indispensable when it mattered most. Samuel and Amara had often spoken about how Daisy's quiet courage had been the thread that stitched their broken world back together. She had not asked for recognition, nor demanded gratitude, and that was exactly why they knew she deserved more than just words. That morning, as the sunlight poured into the living room, Samuel called Daisy into the room. She arrived quietly, wiping her hands on her apron, her hair tied back in neat cornrows, her face calm as ever. "Good morning, sir." "Ma," she greeted respectfully. Samuel smiled. "Good morning, Daisy. Please, have a seat." She hesitated for a moment. She had never been invited to sit in the living room like this before, but at Samuel's gentle nod, she lowered herself onto the edge of the sofa. Amara leaned forward, a warm smile playing on her lips. "Daisy, you've been more than a housemaid to us. You've been family." Daisy blinked, a little startled, unsure how to respond. Samuel reached into a folder beside him and pulled out an envelope. "We've been thinking a lot about everything you've done for us, your loyalty, your courage. You saw danger when we were blind. You stood by me when others turned away." He handed her the envelope. "Inside is your first-class ticket to Dubai. A full 2-week vacation, hotel, tours, and every comfort, all arranged. You've never had a break, Daisy. It's time you did." Daisy gasped softly, her hand trembling as she took the envelope. She looked up, eyes wide, disbelief shadowing her face. "Sir. Ma. I don't know what to say." Samuel smiled warmly. "There's more." He stood and retrieved a second envelope, thicker this time, more substantial. "This," he continued, "is the deed to a house, not a mansion, but a lovely bungalow in a safe, quiet neighborhood. It's yours. No rent. No loans. A home, Daisy." Tears welled in Daisy's eyes. She clutched the envelopes tightly against her chest. For a long moment, she was too overcome to speak. Then, with a shaky breath, she stood up and curtsied. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you, sir. Thank you, Ma. God bless you." Amara rose and wrapped Daisy in a hug, and for the first time, Daisy allowed herself to simply be, no titles, no barriers, just gratitude and peace. A week later, Daisy boarded the plane bound for Dubai, her first time out of Nigeria. She sat by the window, staring at the clouds as they drifted by, a smile playing on her lips. She carried no heavy bags of worry, no burdens of the past, only dreams, and a future she had never dared to imagine. Back in Lagos, Samuel and Amara stood in front of the newly built company headquarters, a symbol of everything they had overcome. Hand in hand, they looked up at the building, then at each other. "Ready?" Amara asked, her smile full of the life they had built together. "More than ever," Samuel replied. They walked forward, not just into a building but into the next chapter of their lives, together, healed, whole. Somewhere in the city, in a quiet neighborhood, the lights flickered on in a cozy bungalow. A place of rest, a place of hope. Daisy's home. And for the first time in a long while, every soul who had been battered by storms was finally at peace. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, like, share, comment. Till the next story.